Forget what you think you learned in Bible study. Ethiopian Christianity didn't start where you'd expect. Let's dive into the real story. Christianity reached Ethiopia early, sure, but it didn't start there, and it definitely didn't start with indigenous Africans. First, rewind to 300 BC, Greeks conquer Egypt and then the Romans take over. So, for 600 years, Egyptian was colonized by Europeans before Ethiopia converted to Christianity. This is important because Ethiopia converted to Christianity by way of Roman-Egyptian rule. At that point, the Egyptian demographic becomes a melting pot, Greek logic, Roman rule, and ancient African spirituality blending under foreign control. When the Romans conquered Egypt, they renamed the Egyptian royal priesthood Coptics. That's where the word Coptic comes in. It literally means Egyptian language. So when you hear the word Coptic, just think of gentrified Egyptians. This is important because the first churches in Ethiopia were called Ethiopian Coptic churches. So, how did Christianity start in Egypt? If you Google it, then it will say the Apostle Mark brought the teachings of Christ to the Library of Alexandria in 40 AD and somehow converted all the world's scholars studying at this library that Christ was the only way. The Library of Alexandria was Africa's and the world's greatest storehouse of wisdom. Yet Rome decides to burn it to the ground in 48 AD. Subsequently, it was shortly after the so-called Apostle Mark came to speed the word of Christ. The old gods are erased, and a new religious story takes root. Meanwhile, in ancient Ethiopia, before Christianity, was originally called the Kingdom of Axum. There the indigenous paid reverence to nature and were so-called pagans. They held the sun in high regards and never heard of a Jesus before. Christianity was nowhere in sight, but Rome was content on spreading Christianity. So they sent Greek missionaries by the name of Frumentius to fully convert the King of Ethiopia in order to turn it into a Christian nation. Rome was a military superpower, and Axum was doing a lot of trading with Rome, so I'm sure the King of Axum wasn't given much of a choice. If you Google how Ethiopia converted to Christianity, they give you a romanticized version of how Frumentius and his brother got shipwrecked in Ethiopia and met the King of Axum. Frumentius then taught the king about Christ, and the King of Axum happily converted on his own. If that don't sound like some Christopher Columbus Pilgrim Plymouth Rock BS. Frumentius eventually established the first Christian monastery of Ethiopia. The people called Frumentius Kesate Birhan, revealer of light, and Abba Salama, father of peace. They resurrected him into sainthood and is now known as St. Frumentius, Apostle of Ethiopia. But take note, the oldest Coptic church is not in Ethiopia, but in Egypt, St. Virgin Mary's Coptic Orthodox Church, which further proof of Christianity's origins in Egypt. Now they say the Ethiopian Coptic Church has the oldest Bible in the world, but guess who wrote it? A Roman monk named Abba Garima. But that a story for another day. So, now that you know the facts, do you think Ethiopia landed on Christianity, or did Christianity land on Ethiopia?